Your Majesty at your service. Welcome to Fair Queen Talks. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of my podcast, Choose to Challenge. Earlier this week, it was International Women's Day, and the theme for this year is Choose to Challenge. International Women's Day has been observed since 1911, a time of great expansion and turbulence in the industrialized world that saw booming population growth and the rise of radical ideologies. On the International Women's Day website, they explain the theme of this year a bit further by saying, "A challenged world is an alert world. Individually, we're all responsible for our own thoughts and actions, all day, every day. We can all choose to challenge and call out gender bias and inequality. We can all choose to seek out and celebrate women's achievements collectively. We can all help create an inclusive world. From challenge comes change, so let's all choose to challenge." This theme is very fitting in this digital age and also throughout this pandemic, where women and girls everywhere are challenging stereotypes, expectations, and ideologies imposed by their respective societies and communities. This week alone, we have seen women challenging establishments, racism, women's safety, and police brutality against peaceful protesters. Women all over the globe are challenging and changing their environments by being brave enough to use their voice and refuse to be silenced. On this episode, I want to explore subjects that women all over the world have to challenge. Things like the right to vote, sexual and reproductive rights, intersectional feminism, and much more. I also want to share things about myself personally and the things I've had to challenge in my own womanhood. Choosing to challenge anything in life requires inner confidence, commitment to the cause, and a lot of resilience. My ancestors have challenged colonial rule, civil war, gender roles, cultural expectations, and political unrest. I deeply respect women of past generations who've challenged the status quo in their era. Their strength and attitude has given me confidence to combat the challenges I've had to face in my life. Growing up into my own womanhood, I've had to challenge many things on the basis of my gender. I recall a moment in my childhood where the girls I was around at the time classed me as a tomboy, and in order for me to be accepted by them, I had to prove that I was a girl. Reflecting back at this moment brings feelings of frustration and sadness because the younger version of myself preferred to give in to social pressure opposed to seeking help from my parents in that moment. In my experience of challenging things on the basis of gender, I've come to realize that we have to challenge our own belief systems and the ideologies that we subscribe to. We have to ask ourselves, what do I think about what it means to be a woman? We have to come to our own conclusions about what society tells us of the role of women. And we have to allow for every woman to have the autonomy over themselves and what womanhood means to them. I can go on and on about my personal experiences, but I'd like to shed light on experiences and challenges women all over the world have to go through. For today's episode, I read through the women's rights section on the Amnesty International website, and I want to share with you some of the things, the subjects that I have identified that women had to challenge in the past and also still are challenging today. The first challenge is the right to vote. During the 19th and 20th century, a lot of people fought for this right, and this movement grew to spread all around the world. However, despite these developments, there are still many places right now around the world where it's very difficult for women to exercise this right. Women are still campaigning to be able to effectively participate in the political process in their countries. Another challenge is sexual and reproductive rights. Everyone should be able to make decisions about their own body. Every woman and girl has sexual and reproductive rights. This means they are entitled to equal access to health services like contraception, safe abortions, to choose if and when and who they marry, and to decide if they want to have children, and if so, how many, when, and with who. Women should be able to live without fear of gender-based violence, including rape and other sexual violence, female genital mutilation, FGM, breast ironing, forced marriage, forced pregnancy, forced abortion, or forced sterilization. Another challenge is freedom of movement. Freedom of movement is the right to move around freely as we please, not just within the country we live in, but also to visit others. But many women face real challenges when it comes to this. They may not be allowed to have their own passports, or they might have to seek permission from a male guardian in order to travel. Another challenge is intersectional feminism. Intersectional feminism is the idea that all the reasons someone might be discriminated against, including race, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, economic class, and disability, amongst others, can overlap and intersect with each other. Another challenge is sexual violence and harassment. Sexual harassment means any unwelcome sexual behavior. This could be physical conduct and advances, demanding or requesting sexual favors, or using inappropriate sexual language. Sexual violence is when someone is physically sexually assaulted. Although men and boys can also be victims of sexual violence, it is women and girls who are overwhelmingly affected. Another challenge is workplace discrimination. Often women are the subject of gender-based discrimination in the workplace. One way of illustrating this is to look at the gender pay gap. Equal pay for the same work is and should be a human right, but time and again, women are denied access to fair and equal wages. Recent figures show that women currently earn roughly 77% of what men earn for the same work. If you dissect this data, you will find that women of different races earn less too. This leads to a lifetime of financial disparity for women, preventing them from fully exercising independence, and means an increased risk of poverty in later life. Lastly, but not least, the challenge is discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. In many countries around the world, women are denied their rights on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, or sex characteristics. Lesbian, bisexual, trans, and intersex women and gender non-conforming people face violence, exclusion, harassment, discrimination. Many are also subjected to extreme violence, including sexual violence or so-called corrective rape and honor killings. Being aware of all of these challenges shows me how much work still needs to be done and demonstrates that gender inequalities exist. This is a problem and it needs to be addressed. Women's rights are human rights. Protecting women's rights makes the world a better place. According to the United Nations, gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls is not just a goal in itself, but a key to sustainable development, economic growth, and peace and security. Research has shown this to be the case. Society gets better for everyone when women's rights are upheld and taken seriously. Whether you are a woman or not, don't accept ideas or laws that create barriers for women. If we're all meant to be great and to be great, we need to create an environment where all humans can thrive regardless of who they are. Choose to challenge the barriers in your mind and your community. Remember that when you do this, you will change the reality for women and girls in the future, just like the women before us progressed our standing in society today. At the end of each episode, I address the queendom. Define your own womanhood. Afford each woman the autonomy to live in the manner she wants. Be thankful to the women before us and fight for those in the future. Being a woman should never be a barrier. Thank you so much for listening to Therapy Talks. See you next time.